I woke up to the sound of the door. I felt disoriented in my surroundings and suddenly remembered the accident I had on my motorcycle. I crashed into the gutter due to being extremely drunk while hanging out with my friends. Luckily, I only ended up with a sprained arm. I checked the clock and it was exactly midnight. The hospital surroundings were quiet except for the nurses doing their rounds. As I looked around, I noticed someone peering through the small mirror on the room's door. I initially thought it was a nurse, but why weren't they coming in? "Nurse," I called out. "What is it?" They didn't respond. I wondered who it could be. If not a nurse, could they be a patient or a visitor of one of the patients? Minutes passed, but the person outside the door didn't leave. When I took a closer look, I was filled with fear as that person was now pressing their face closely against the mirror of the door. Even from a distance, I could see their eyes, which were pitch black. I got alarmed and pressed the call button in the room to ask for help. A nurse came in and asked me what I needed. I said, "Miss, please check who the person at the door is." The nurse was puzzled but went out to see if there was anyone there. The nurse returned and said, "Sir, I didn't see anyone outside." Despite her assurance, I still felt uneasy, worried that the person might show up again. I tried to calm myself down and decided to distract myself by turning on the TV. While watching, I felt like something was moving under the hospital bed. I got scared again. I didn't hesitate to call the nurse once more. After a few minutes, the nurse arrived and asked me what I needed. I said, "Nurse, please check what's under the hospital bed." The nurse bent down to look but found nothing. After 10 minutes had passed, I suddenly sat up in bed and found myself sitting on the cold floor, my eyes widening in horror at the sight of a ghost standing in the corner of the room. I wanted to stand up to ask for help, but I was overcome with fear. As the ghost suddenly moved closer and closer to me, I began to scream in my room. 3 nurses rushed in, asking me what had happened, but I was too terrified to answer. My whole body trembled, and all I could do was scream. Then, everything went dark. The nurses gave me a sedative injection, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was alone in the room again. Before the ghost could appear once more, I stood up and left the room. It was still early, so there was no one in the hospital corridor. I was unsure if leaving my room was the right decision because there were dark areas in the hospital. I decided to sit by the side instead. Even though I was already outside my room, my fear had not subsided. It feels like it's just around me, suddenly appearing beside me. Thinking that, I decided to walk again and go to the nurse's station. The nervousness wouldn't leave my chest as I walked down the hospital corridor. As I was walking, I felt like there was someone behind me. I stopped and looked back, but I didn't see anyone, so I continued walking. However, I still felt like someone was really following me. That's why I hastened my pace. While walking swiftly, I kept looking back behind me. Suddenly, as I looked back at the path ahead of me, a woman appeared out of nowhere, seemingly piercing through the hospital wall. I quickly stepped back, almost sitting down on the floor in shock. And suddenly, I remembered the reason why I had the accident. I recalled that on that night, as I was walking along the dark street on my way home, someone suddenly appeared and crossed in front of me, causing me to lose control, and my motorcycle went straight into the gutter. I'm not sure why a ghost is following me. Is it already coming to get me? I don't want to die yet. My heart is beating faster, and I started running as fast as I could. When I reached the nurse's station, I was puzzled why there wasn't a single nurse there. I decided to wait and sat down on a chair in front of the nurse's station. And suddenly the lights went off. Unable to wait any longer, I told myself that I needed to get out of that building. I got into the elevator, and as the doors closed, a chill ran down my spine when I saw the floor buttons light up. My eyes widened at the sight, and I frantically pressed the ground floor button. Instead of descending, the elevator went up further. It abruptly stopped and opened on the 9th floor, empty. But I couldn't help but think, what if a ghost boarded? I felt like I was about to faint from the intense fear gripping me. I pondered, was it a mistake leaving my room? However, it was too late for regrets. I had to muster up my courage. Finally, the doors closed again, and the elevator descended straight to the ground floor. When I finally got down, a hospital security guard stopped me and asked where I was headed. I said I was going home, but he insisted I go back to my room. He grabbed my arm and tried to pull me back upstairs, but I really didn't want to go back. While we were struggling, I noticed his hand felt cold, and when I looked at his face, fear gripped me as I saw his eyes were blank and black. I fell on the floor out of fear. I slowly slid back. Then, when I was a bit farther from the guard, I stood up and ran as fast as I could. I ran and ran until I found a taxi to ride. At home, they couldn't believe what happened to me. All I know is I saw what I saw. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination or a hallucination.